Hello everyone, I'm Gemma Bettelani and my work is on the investigation of the role of lateral force in texture-induced motion bias during reaching tasks. The research question of this study is based on the results of our previous work, where we showed that touch is an auxiliary proprioceptive cue to guide hand movements. In particular, we demonstrated that when participants slide their fingertip on a rigid plate to move toward the target without any visual feedback on hand location, the tactile motion estimates were biased by ridge orientation perpendicularly and were integrated with the unbiased motor command and the musculoskeletal proprioceptive cues. This integrated estimate resulted into a perceived motion direction that was deviated from the target one. This triggers a correction of the movement in the opposite direction. Here an example of the execution of the task performed by a participant. The goal of this work is to show to which extent this observed behavior depends also on the lateral component of the reaction force that arises during the dynamic interaction between the fingerpad and the surface of the ridge. Indeed, during slip motions on a lubricated rigid plate, part of the fingertip pushes against the vertical side of the ridges, and this generates, in absence of friction, a reaction force perpendicular to the longitudinal axis of the ridges. When the ridges are oriented, the reaction force can be decomposed in two forces, Fx and the lateral force Fy. To pursue our goal, we developed an experimental setup which consisted of a lubricated rigid plate, whose orientation with respect to the frontal plane of the participant can be varied controlling a DC motor. A leap motion device was used for the tracking of the participant index position. With the 6-axis force torque sensor under the plate, we accurately measured the lateral force. Participant had to move the index finger toward the target direction, sliding on a lubricated rigid plate. They wore an head-mounted display which visualized the target without information on actual end location and plate characteristics. The participant had to perform two different blocks of the experiment, performing two different levels of the normal force. Indeed, modulating the normal force, we can also modulate the lateral force. The experiment was performed for different ridge orientations. Results related to lateral force show that the lateral force is a function of the orientation of the ridges only in the case of the high threshold. Instead, at a low threshold, ridges do not produce a relevant strain of the pulp and the lateral force is negligible. Results related to hand displacement show that the angular deviation of the hand trajectory is a function of the orientation of the ridges in both threshold conditions. So, in conclusion, in this work we have shown that the lateral force is a function of the ridge orientation only for the high threshold. The effect of the ridge orientation on hand motion was found to be larger for the high threshold compared to the low threshold. However, also in this latter case, we still observed the same bias trajectory reported in our previous work, despite the negligible value of the lateral force. This supports our hypothesis that the motor bias arises for the integration of tactile motion estimates and the other proprioceptive cues. Thank you.